Okay, Mike, I have two after, and we should get started.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Mike Nicholas. I'm the Special Projects Director for the Groundwater Protection Council. I would like to welcome all the participants to this NRAP workshop. You know, the National Risk Assessment Partnership, which is an initiative within the Department of Energy's National Energy Technology Laboratory, has developed these risk assessment tools which are designed to evaluate risks associated with safe, permanent geologic storage of CO2. And in this workshop, they're going to provide you with a guide to the practical uses of several of these tools. I want to thank the NRAP staff and leadership for their willingness to present this workshop. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Bob Dilmore with NETL, who will moderate the workshop. Over to you, Bob.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mike. As we get started, I also want to thank Erica Carr and Dan Yates and the rest of the GWPC team for the opportunity to present this workshop in conjunction with the GWPC's 2021 annual forum. It's a great opportunity for us, and the membership of your organization is a very good target stakeholder group for us, so we do appreciate the opportunity. On the NETL side, I'd also like to thank Nia Serrata, Chris Wyatt, Terry D'Amico for all of their help to coordinate and set up this meeting and make sure that we as presenters are on the stick and prepared and understand the technology. Also want to thank the Fossil Energy, Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management at DOE headquarters, our sponsors for the National Risk Assessment Partnership under the Carbon Storage Program. In particular, Darren Damiani is our program director for carbon storage, and John Latinsky is the director of the Storage and Transportation Division at headquarters. So thanks very much. Thank also the presenters. While I'm thanking people, also thank the presenters today for taking the time to get all this stuff together and prepare it to present to the audience. And finally, I want to thank you all in the audience for taking the time. We've had, I think, a fairly strong response to this workshop, and we see it as a great opportunity to get a little bit of the word out about what we're doing, and hopefully and make sure you guys know where these resources reside and how you can interact with the NRAP team. So ideally, this would have been an actual in-person workshop with some more back and forth. I think the reality that we're facing is we're having a virtual meeting at best. So there are some hybrid meetings out there these days, but this is not ideal for this type of interaction. But I think we are going to have a sort of outward-facing presentation style meeting that we'll call a workshop, and hopefully in the not-too-distant future we can have something that is more like an organic, hands-on, fully interactive workshop. In the meantime, we'll just try to accommodate things as best we can with all the great technology resources we have. So hopefully this workshop, this presentation-style workshop, is the beginning of a discussion and not the end. So I will start to move through. I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview of the National Risk Assessment Partnership and talk about some of the products we're generating in phase 2, of course, with some emphasis on the tools, which is the focus of this workshop. I should mention that last February, the last face-to-face meeting I was at personally, we had the opportunity to give another workshop presentation in front of the Groundwater Protection Council audience in conjunction with their 2020 UIC conference. That workshop was focused on conceptual workflows for risk management, risk assessment at geologic carbon storage sites that I think are complementary to the tools that we're presenting today. but a little different focus. As I look back through my records, our records, I found out that the last time we actually had a workshop specifically dedicated to the NRAP tools was back in August of 2016. So perhaps this is overdue, but we definitely do appreciate the opportunity. Let's see if I can. Okay. So as Mike said, the National Risk Assessment Partnership is ZWE funded Office of Classical Energy and Carbon Management directed project that looks to leverage the capabilities not just at NETL but across several of the national laboratories that have been thinking about carbon storage for a long time to quantitatively assess and manage long-term environmental risks associated with geologic carbon storage amidst the uncertainty at a potential carbon storage site. So this is geologic uncertainty and operational scenario uncertainty associated with these complex engineered geologic systems. So the 5 contributing national laboratories, and we will hear presentations from each of these 5 national laboratories today, just sort of reflecting the strongly integrated nature of this project. The 5 contributing labs are NETL, where I work, Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, Los Alamos National Laboratory, Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. The work that we do is informed by an executive committee with membership from these 5 national laboratories, and we do have interaction with a stakeholder group with representation from industry, academia, state and federal regulators, other government organizations, and some NGOs. This stakeholder group representation here may be slightly outdated. I apologize for that, but gives you a feel for the breadth of the membership of the stakeholder group. And I should mention the environmental risks that we concern ourselves with are really 2, potential for unwanted fluid migration, loss of containment and potential leakage to receptors of concern, and also potential ground motion that, from induced seismicity that could potentially be stimulated from large volume CO2 injection. So this is the last picture we have of our team, and still in April, and still all sitting in our homes or offices interacting. We're spread all over the country, so I think this is sort of our normal method of interaction, perhaps without the masks. But we do like to get together as often as travel permits for face-to-face meetings. That's not always possible. Here's the last picture from our last face-to-face meeting back in 2019. So this is much more satisfying for I think the human brain, which is kind of social. We're all social creatures, and it's nice to see people standing next to each other, but hopefully we get back there soon. So the work that we do is motivated at the very highest level by the program's overarching goals to have convergence in the maturation of carbon capture technology and carbon storage technology, across, the capture, storage, infrastructure, transportation, and other infrastructure domains, in this, not only in this 2025 timeframe and really advancing the maturity, reducing costs, improving performance thereafter, so that we can accomplish the Biden administration's current goals, which are, I think fairly aggressive to dramatically reduce the greenhouse gas emissions using, all of the tools available. But that tool set certainly does include CO2 capture and geologic sequestration. Yep. And so this is motivation for us. I'll also mention, there's a quote that I don't have shown here, but back from April 2021 from the Deputy Energy Secretary, David Turk, where he, among other things, says that this is kind of moving into a make it or break it opportunity and window on the CCUS front. So I think that is true, and I think that there are lots of drivers for that, but the opportunity as we see it is now, and it seems very strongly driven certainly from the top down, but I think even on other fronts. So we're just trying to ensure that we are doing our part. You know, at the highest level, people say that the largest hurdle for capture relates to the cost and the energy performance for capture. For storage, the biggest driver really is the risk, the perceived and real risks, and understanding how we can quantify those, reduce the uncertainty, and manage those risks over time. So that is really the focus of NRAP. The approach that we take in NRAP, this is been using this for a while, but it's to recognize that this is a complex engineered geologic system, and if we're really going to represent the behavior and the uncertainty in the behavior of this system over time, still, even with present-day computational capabilities, which are, very impressive, the tractable way to approach this at present is to divide this system up into its important components: the storage reservoir, the sealing cap rock, the intermediate formations, potential leakage pathways, faults, fractures, wells, and receptors of concern, groundwater aquifers in the atmosphere, and to develop, treat each of those initially separately, developing robust physics-based numerical models of each of those system components, not just single realizations, but ensembles that capture the uncertainty in performance, and from those build, either use those to inform the development of robust analytical models or build data-driven proxy models, reduced order models, anything from a simple lookup table to something that's very fancy, uses the latest artificial intelligence approaches, and then use those fast forecasting tools for each of the system components, couple them together to describe the behavior of the entire geologic system, and then exercise that integrated assessment model in order to understand the behavior and the performance and how that system can be effectively managed to manage risks. So in phase one of NRAP, which ended back sort of at the end of 2016, the question we were trying to tackle back then was just how can we, looking at the sort of iconic figure on the left here, which is qualitative description of risk over time, as it evolves at a site and it increases through the period of active injection, and then after that it starts to decay, relax as the system relaxes. How can we, rather than describing that qualitatively, how can we describe that quantitatively, understand the uncertainty in that quantification, and really, put units on these axes in order to better inform decision making. And this is what we were able to accomplish in phase one. We had a set of 10 tools that we released at the end of our phase one back in 2016. As I'll describe in a minute, what work we're doing now is an evolution of that. So again, we're trying to develop a system here that allows us to account for the physics of the system, but also the uncertainty in the features, events, and processes. So we have uncertainty that accounts for parameter uncertainty, model uncertainty potentially, and also scenario uncertainty between different operational choices. Veronica will talk about this in more detail, so I won't talk about it here too much, but we sort of divide the system up and describe each of the system components. Once we've done that, now moving into phase two, we're endeavoring to take that system model, the engineered geologic system, and build on top of that. We'll complementary to that different fit-for-purpose applications that allow us to address different aspects of stakeholder decision-making. And some of this relates to decisions that would be made, for example, relative to permit application. So supporting analysis that would help a stakeholder, a potential operator, develop a justification that would relate to a permit application as one of our targets, but also other operational decisions. And really what we're trying to do now, to sum it up in phase 2, is address the questions of how can we use this risk-based approach and these tools that we develop to inform decision-making of stakeholders, and how can we manage these risks once they are quantified and relatively well understood, and make decisions in the, over the life cycle of a carbon storage project, in the face of the uncertainty that exists, but also understanding that as we gain information through the project life cycle, we can constrain that uncertainty and build confidence in our understanding. Just to talk about the tools that we're developing in NRAP, we use this pyramid as a simple way to show that, foundational to what we're doing, we are a research project, so the foundation of what we're doing is research. So some of the work that we do is exploratory, trying to develop some of these methods, develop some of these tools, test them out on realistic, real case studies if we can, but often we use community data sets, which we make publicly available. We have these representative hypothetical problems where CO2 has not been injected at these sites, but we have a robust simulation of various aspects of the system, reservoir behavior, the leakage pathway behavior, the receptor response, also the numerical simulation of the geophysical monitoring of to determine the detectability of leakage, potential leakage at a site. So, these are data sets that we provide out as we develop them, and we do QA on them. These are resources that are available on the NETL Energy Data Exchange, which is an information portal that developed by NETL. I'll mention that a few other times. We also develop, a lot of peer-reviewed publications. So those are out there as a body of work that we use. They're available through certainly through the journal websites. And I'll note we have this virtual special issue from September of 2020 that I think represents 16 publications, recent publications that describe some of the most recent NRAP research. But there are publications in a variety of other peer-reviewed journals out there. As you can see, there are about 450 total NRAP publications at this point. Those are also typically made available through the DOE's information bridge, the ASTI information bridge, which is available at that website there. Moving up on our pyramid, we have the NRAP tools. These are what we'll be talking about today, so I'm not going to belabor this, but I will say that most of these tools, actually all of these tools are available in beta form. Some of them have been recently updated. Several of them are sort of updated intermittently as improved versions become available. At the end of phase 2, we will issue final versions of these, but in the meantime, these tools are a resource that is available. We encourage you to download these, test them, try to use them, ask us questions. As you go through, seek clarification. This is, really trying to adopt this DevOps strategy where we're trying to interact with our tool users as much as possible so we can improve the usability and the utility of the tools as we go along. So that feedback is really critical to what we're doing. I'll also mention, we have heard from some of our tool users that, and in particular those from industry, that, in order to be able to justify using the tools, some degree of quality assurance and documentation is required. So we have been taking some pains to try to build that quality assurance documentation basis for as many of the tools, as many of the tool components as possible. We do have a quality assurance plan we put out in 2018. We do quality assurance for individual components and coupled components within the integrated assessment model. This portal here is available to you all. I need to give you a little bit better form of this URL, but this is a resource that we continue to build as we go, and we hopefully it includes the kinds of documentation that's valuable to you to give you confidence that to use the tools going forward. Some of these tools and tool components have undergone benchmark testing. I think this is an opportunity for collaboration going forward. If you understand that there are benchmark studies or data sets that you think would be valuable for us to apply for the NRAP tools, we would love to engage with you on that sort of thing. So please do reach out to discuss those things as you see opportunities arise. This is a new thing. I definitely want to highlight that we have a new NRAP tool user forum. Historically, people have either been sending comments and questions to the principal developers of the tools directly, or to the nrap@netl.doe.gov website. And that's fine to continue to do that. Those are viable pathways, but our preferred pathway is to use this user forum that we just stood up recently, and it's only now, you'll see this is recent screen capture, starting to get populated with some questions from tool users and some answers. This is where we will, give the majority of our attention as questions come through. This really helps on a variety of fronts. It helps us give us a single portal, but it really also gives you all an additional resource, because you'll see the questions as they're posed from others and the answers to those questions. So we're hopeful that this will be a resource that becomes valuable going forward. This is available. It's functionality of the Energy Data Exchange. So you will need to have a membership, which is free registration for the Energy Data Exchange. This is also how you would the portal you would use to access the NRAP tools. So if there are any questions about this during or I guess after the workshop, be happy to try to address those and get you guys connected. Also available through the Energy Data Exchange, we have been trying to, in addition to the peer-reviewed publications, try to stand up some description of a body of work, a catalog of applications of the NRAP tools. So these are applications that we in NRAP have developed, but there are also third parties that have been applying the tools and developing studies, and in some cases peer-reviewed publications that describe applications of the NRAP tools relevant to hypothetical and real potential carbon storage sites. So if we have time, I can hop out and show you guys. I don't know if we'll have time right after, but during the discussion, I'm happy to give you guys a quick tour around some of these resources. But this will get you to relevant publications, but also a summary level description of these applications for a variety of sites, mostly domestic, but there are one, and I think a second I just heard about recently, international applications of the NRAP tools. And this is just a listing of those applications that are out there now on the online catalog. You see that a lot of this relates to prototype testing of the tools and method development for the tools. Some analog studies for analogous sites to carbon storage, or things like wastewater injection, but a lot of preliminary site characterization, site screening for several projects, including some of the program's carbon safe projects. Another product that we're generating, and I think I'm running low on time here. Yeah, I'm doing okay on time. So the last workshop that we gave in conjunction with the UIC meeting last year of the Groundwater Protection Council, we talked, I think in a general way, sort of about prototype workflows that we were proposing, applications of the NRAP tools, but really the conceptualization of how you would think about these risks at a geologic carbon storage site and make decisions, risk-based decision making. So we've distilled a lot of that thinking down to a pair of draft manuscripts that we released back in March. These we're calling recommended practices. They are conceptual in their description. They deliberately do not invoke the NRAP tools explicitly, we believe they are complementary to the NRAP tools. So these are reports that are intended to describe a risk-based approach as you would think through sort of a priori representation of risk at a site, and then use that as the basis to incorporate information and data as they become available to constrain those risks over time at a site, so that you can pass the different decision gates through the life cycle of a carbon storage site related to site screening, things like area review determination, risk management during injection, decision making about mitigation, but also post-injection site closure and those sorts of things. So this is just a little bit of a zoom in to show you here that there's this a priori representation of risk before actual operation at the site, and then an iterative loop that is used for various decision-making steps at a site, as I just mentioned. These are resources we're trying to, I think the induced seismicity recommended practice is, we've received all comments back from that. We had a pretty long period of public comment. We'll be issuing a final version of that sometime in the next, hopefully month, but say month or two. The containment assurance leakage risk recommended practice is lagging behind us slightly, but still hoping to get that out in the next few months. So there's still some opportunity, I think, to review that if people have thoughts and comments about that, but we will hope to have these out for a resource in the not too distant future. And I will mention the induced seismicity one. We got a little bit of a head start. That one was evolved from the 2012 protocol for induced seismicity risk management developed by the Geothermal Office. So we sort of modified that for carbon storage and built upon it based on insights from the from NRAP and elsewhere in the carbon storage RD&D community. I mentioned before that all of these things we're trying to improve iteratively as we go through a DevOps process. So your involvement and interaction is really critical to that success of that DevOps. And the more that you all are engaged, provide constructive criticism. Most of these tools that we're talking about are open source, so it's certainly also a completely viable option to have users add functionality and interact with us, and we can work to make a determination about integrating that into the capability of the overall tool. These are things that I think add value. We certainly encourage those. We just to get to the end here, I want to acknowledge that there are other aspects of the carbon storage program. There are all of the carbon safe projects, which are providing a wealth of information. Some of the more mature carbon safe projects are developing permanent applications. There's also the 20 plus years of knowledge from these, I believe, from the regional initiatives. I have my dates wrong there, but a really strong body of knowledge from the DOE fossil energy carbon management regional initiatives for advancing carbon storage, capture and storage. It's also the SMART initiative. There's industry, which I'll talk about in a second. Industry best practices. This is things like the bow tie analysis that exist out there. We know we're not working in a vacuum here. There's also obviously the very important regulatory context, and as the understanding and the experience with regulation and permitting evolves, hopefully we can support that to support the broader goal that we all have to succeed in commercial deployment of geologic carbon storage. I will just mention very quickly, there's a whole other project that is, I think right now NRAP is very much, in my opinion, along the critical path of what needs to happen in the very near future. There's to enable commercial deployment of carbon storage, but there is another project funded by the carbon storage program that is much more forward-looking, looking at advanced technologies, machine learning, data, AI type approaches to develop next generation real-time visualization tools. So think, if you will, sorry, this might advance by itself. Google Earth for the subsurface, rapid prediction and virtual learning tools, so things that would allow people to understand the behavior of a geologic system with a high degree of confidence and understanding of the physics, but in a very rapid way with the virtual learning environment, and tools for real-time forecasting and real-time updating of system performance and decision-making about performance of the system, as well as, I think, some of the safety and risk considerations. This is also a project with a broad set of stakeholders and performers, and I think I've probably spoken a little bit too much, so I will stop now. Thank you all, and I'm going to try to move the agenda along here. I will very briefly introduce our first speaker about the NRAP integrated assessment model for carbon storage. It's Dr. Veronica Vasilevska, research scientist at NETL and the principal developer of the integrated assessment model. So thanks, welcome all, and thanks very much for participating.